The courtroom was full that morning. Lawyers walked quickly with heavy files. Clients sat nervously on the benches. The judge's chair stood high at the front. Calm, strict, powerful. But among the crowd, no one noticed her. A woman in her early 30s entered the courtroom silently. She wore a plain, cream-colored shalwar kameez and a small black scarf. Her sandals made no sound. Her eyes were tired but deep, like someone who had seen too much and spoken too little. She held a small black file close to her chest. Some people looked at her, then looked away. "Must be someone's assistant," a lawyer whispered. "No confidence in her steps," another said. "She won't last 5 minutes." She walked slowly to the second bench and sat down, quiet, still, like she didn't belong, but she was supposed to be there. Her name was Sarah, and today she had come for something big. At 10 a.m. sharp, the judge entered. Everyone stood. Then everyone sat. The bailiff announced the case. Case number 412, Mrs. Shahida Begum versus Imran Ali and others. It was a property dispute. A widow fighting against her late husband's greedy brothers. They had taken her house, her land, and left her with nothing. Everyone thought this case was hopeless. The opposing lawyer, Mr. Daniel, was a famous man, smart, rich, arrogant. He smirked as he looked at Shahida, the poor widow in an old brown shawl. He didn't even look at the woman sitting beside her, Sarah. He thought she was a helper, or maybe a friend. Then the judge looked up. "Who is representing the plaintiff today?" he asked. Shahida stood trembling and pointed to the woman beside her. "She is, Your Honor. This is my lawyer." Gasps filled the room. "Her," Mr. Daniel laughed softly. "Is this a joke, Your Honor?" Sarah stood up. Her voice was quiet but steady. "No, sir. I am her legal representative." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Your name?" "Sarah Khalid." He paused, searching his memory. The name sounded familiar. She handed him her license copy. The judge looked it over, then nodded. "You may proceed." Sarah turned to face the court. For a moment, everyone waited for her to fumble, to forget, to break. She looked at the file in her hands. Then she began. Her first words were simple, but they were clear. Strong. Sharp. Like a knife wrapped in silk. "Your Honor, the truth is simple. My client's husband died 1 year ago. In his final days, he wrote a will. That will was ignored. His brothers took what didn't belong to them. Today, we are here to show proof, not just emotion." The courtroom fell silent. Even Mr. Daniel stopped smiling. Sarah opened her file and pulled out 3 documents. "These," she said, "are property papers, signed by the late Mr. Salim, my client's husband. These are bank statements showing land tax paid by Mrs. Shahida, and this," she lifted a small envelope, "is the original will, registered and sealed 1 week before he passed away." The judge leaned forward. The air in the room changed. "No," one blinked, she continued, "the law does not care about power. It cares about truth. And the truth is written here, signed, sealed, and protected by time." Mr. Daniel stood up, trying to interrupt. "Objection, she's—" The judge raised his hand. "Let her finish." Sarah turned her eyes toward Daniel. Calm, without fear. "I may not look like much, sir," she said, "but don't confuse silence with weakness." The courtroom fell silent again. Shahida, sitting behind her, had tears in her eyes. She had come to court thinking she had no one. But now, someone was standing for her. And that someone was making the whole court listen. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. As Sarah sat down, the judge slowly looked at her. There was something about her. He didn't say much, but in his eyes, you could see the truth. He was not just hearing her, he was watching her. And maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to remember who she really was. The judge took a deep breath and placed the documents gently on his desk. He looked at Sarah again. There was something strange about her. Her confidence was quiet, but strong. She didn't argue like other lawyers. She didn't shout or wave her hands. She spoke with truth, and the courtroom listened. Mr. Daniel, the opposing lawyer, was not used to this. He usually crushed his opponents within minutes. But now, for the first time in years, he felt unsure. Still, he didn't show it. He stood up, smiled, and began speaking. "Your Honor, these papers may look impressive, but anyone can create such things. A poor woman, claiming property. How do we know these documents are real? Where is the witness? Where is the verification?" He walked in front of the courtroom confidently. "Let's be honest," he said. "This is a classic emotional case. She is a widow. Everyone feels bad for her, but the law is not about feelings. It is about proof." He turned to the judge. "And I assure you, we will prove these papers are fake." Sarah didn't react. She simply opened her file again. Then, in a soft voice, she said, "May I respond, Your Honor?" The judge nodded. Sarah stood up. "This," she said, "is a copy of the will, registered at the local council office. Here is the official seal and signature of the notary. And this," she held up a second sheet, "is a copy of the video. Recording of Mr. Salim's last will saved on a pen drive. His face, his voice, his words, clear and honest." The courtroom leaned forward. "A widow bringing a video will?" "That was rare." Sarah continued, "You say this is an emotional case. You're right. A woman has lost her husband, her house, her life. But don't mistake her pain for weakness. Behind her is not just sorrow, but truth." Mr. Daniel looked uncomfortable now. He hadn't expected this. He had studied Shahida's background. No lawyer wanted to take her case. She had no money, no support. And suddenly this unknown woman appeared and flipped the case in just one session. Who was she? He looked at Sarah again, more carefully this time. She didn't smile. She didn't look at him. She just sat down quietly. The judge called for a short break. As people walked out of the courtroom, whispers filled the air. "Who is this new lawyer? She speaks like a senior." "I've never seen her before, but she's something else." Meanwhile, Shahida sat beside Sarah with tears in her eyes. "No one believed me before," she whispered. "I was losing everything." Sarah gently touched her hand. "You still have something important." "What? Truth?" Shahida looked at her with hope. She had come to court feeling like a beggar, someone no one would listen to. But now, for the first time, she felt like someone had truly seen her and that someone was fighting for her like family. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Daniel walked quickly to his assistant. "Find out who this woman is," he said. "Her full name, her history, everything." The assistant nodded and rushed off, because now Daniel wasn't just fighting a case. He was fighting an opponent who had come out of nowhere and was suddenly becoming the center of attention. As the break ended and people returned to the courtroom, the judge adjusted his glasses and looked at Sarah once again. He still couldn't remember where he had seen her before. But deep inside, he knew this was not just another case, and this was not just another lawyer. There was a story behind her, a hidden fire, a past that had brought her back, quietly, suddenly, powerfully. And he was about to find out what that story was. The courtroom. Lights were bright, but Sarah's thoughts were somewhere darker, in a place she had locked away long ago. As the judge studied her carefully, something in her eyes took him back. A memory flashed in his mind. He had once seen a young girl like her, many years ago, standing in a law college courtroom during a mock trial. That girl had spoken with fire. Her name was Sarah Khalid. He blinked. Could it be the same girl? But that Sarah had disappeared. Vanished. Right after her final year, no job, no cases, no name in the bar association. Why? What had happened to her? The answer to that question lay in the past. 10 years ago. Back then, Sarah was not silent. She was bold, sharp, known as the rising star of her law college. Everyone admired her, even her teachers. Her mentor was Professor Nasir, an honest, kind man who taught her more than just law. He taught her justice, sheer brilliance, he often said. She'll change the system one day, and she almost did. Until one case changed her life. A young maid was found dead in a rich politician's house. The case was buried quickly. No one wanted to talk about it. But Sarah couldn't stay quiet. She started digging, asking questions, helping the maid's mother find legal help. That's when the threats started. Phone calls, anonymous letters. One day, Professor Nasir was found, dead in a car accident. Sarah didn't believe it was an accident. She knew she was next, so she left. She packed her books, burned her notes, deleted her name from every legal database. She became invisible. She stopped dreaming. She stopped fighting. She stopped being herself. For years, she lived like a shadow, working small jobs, avoiding the legal world. Until one day, Shahida came. To her, a weak woman, crying outside a mosque with court papers in her hand. "Can you help me?" she had asked. Sarah wanted to say no. But something in that woman's eyes reminded her of the maid's mother. Helpless, lost, unheard. And something in her heart said, "This is your chance. This time, don't run." So she came back, to the courtroom, to the law, to herself. And now she was standing in front of a judge who had once admired her fire and was now beginning to see its return. But not everyone wanted her back. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Daniel's assistant returned with information. "Sir, I found her file." He handed over a brown envelope. Daniel opened it and read, "Sarah Khalid, top student at City Law College, disappeared after professor's mysterious death, involved in one controversial investigation, never officially charged. But," Daniel smiled, "so she has a dark past after all." He looked up, eyes sharp. "Let's bring it into." The courtroom was silent as Sarah stood up once again. This was her first full argument, the moment everyone had been waiting for. Some people were still whispering, "That's the same girl from the old case, right? Didn't she disappear? Why is she here now?" But Sarah didn't hear the whispers. She focused only on the papers in front of her and the truth they carried. The judge looked at her closely. "You may begin," he said. She nodded, then walked slowly toward the center of the courtroom. Everyone watched her. No high heels, no fancy suit, no famous law firm behind her, just a woman with a quiet voice and a powerful truth. She began. "Your Honor," she said, "today is not just about land or papers. It is about a promise broken and a woman left behind." She lifted a photo of Shahida and her late husband. This man, Mr. Salim, built everything with his hard work. A small house, a little shop, a simple life. He loved his wife and gave her everything he could. But after his death, his brothers took it all. Sarah took a slow breath. They said she had no right, that she was just a woman, alone, powerless. But what they didn't expect was that she had proof. She walked to the judge's desk and gently placed the registered will, the original. "Tax receipts and video proof. Here is the will, signed and sealed. Here are the tax receipts, paid by Shahida. And here is the video." She handed over a USB. In this video, Mr. Salim clearly says, "After my death, everything I own belongs to my wife." Gasps were heard. Even the judge seemed moved. But Sarah didn't stop. She turned to the opposition side, to Mr. Daniel and his clients. "This case is just about property. But to my client, it is about dignity, about being seen, about being heard." Her voice rose slightly, not angry, but firm. She lost her husband. Then she lost her home. She came to court. Not for money, but for justice. The judge nodded slowly, writing notes. Mr. Daniel stood up. Objection! This is emotional talk. No legal weight. Sarah turned toward him, her eyes calm, her tone cool. This is not emotion, Mr. Daniel. These are facts. Facts you never expected her to bring. Daniel paused. He had no reply. The room stayed quiet. Sarah looked around the courtroom. Law students were watching. Old lawyers, too. And in the back, Shahida sat, crying softly. Not from pain this time, but from pride. For the first time, someone had stood beside her and fought like she mattered. Sarah looked at the judge once more. Your Honor, I ask for nothing more than fairness. Let the law speak, not money, not fear, just law. She stepped back. Silence. Then the judge spoke. I have seen enough for today. I will review all documents. Next hearing, both parties will be given time to respond. He paused, then looked at Sarah. Well argued. Sarah bowed her head gently. Thank you, sir. As she returned to her seat, even some of the opposing party members looked impressed. Outside the courtroom, news had already started to spread. A new lawyer has shocked the court. A silent fighter has arrived. Reporters waited near the gate, trying to get her picture. But she quietly walked past them, head down, heart steady. She wasn't here for fame. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here because she remembered the day she walked away from law and promised herself never to return. But sometimes, promises must be broken to protect justice. And sometimes, the most powerful voice is the one that was silent for too long. The next morning, the courtroom was full again. Everyone had returned. Law students, reporters, even lawyers from other cases. All came to see the woman who had shocked the court. Sarah Khalid. But Sarah didn't care who was watching. She sat beside Shahida, holding her hand gently. You're not alone anymore, she whispered. Shahida nodded, tears in her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt safe. The judge entered the room and sat in his high chair. Everyone stood. Then, slowly, everyone sat down. The judge cleared his throat and looked at the file in front of him. I have reviewed the documents, he said calmly. They are all valid. The registration numbers match. The dates, the stamps, the signatures, everything is legal. He looked at Mr. Daniel. Do you have anything to say before we move forward? Daniel stood up, but he didn't look confident. Yes, Your Honor. I would like to question the lawyer herself. Gasps filled the room. The judge raised an eyebrow. The lawyer? Yes, sir, Daniel said. This court has the right to know her full background. We must ask, why did she vanish from the legal system for 10 years? The judge paused. Sarah looked straight ahead. She had expected this. Daniel smiled slightly. With respect, Your Honor, we should not ignore the past, especially when it involves sensitive matters. He placed a file on the table. It had one name on the cover. Sarah Khalid, Confidential History. Whispers started again. Sarah stood up slowly. I have no objection, she said. The judge looked at her with calm eyes. Miss Sarah Khalid, he said, do you wish to explain? Sarah took a deep breath. Yes, sir. I disappeared from the legal world not because I was guilty, but because I was scared. She looked at the courtroom, not with shame, but with honesty. I fought a case 10 years ago. A maid was murdered. The people responsible were powerful. My teacher died while helping me. I was threatened, followed. My name was blacklisted. I ran. Silence. But I never stopped believing in the law. I only stopped believing I was strong enough to use it. She turned to look at Shahida. Until I met someone who had lost even more than I had, and still had the courage to fight. The judge watched her carefully. Then he opened the file Danielle had given. He flipped through the pages. After a few seconds, he closed it, then looked up. "What happened in your past is not a crime," he said. "In fact, I remember you now. You were one of the brightest students in law college. The way you argued that old case. I never forgot." He smiled softly. "I always wondered where you went." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she stood, straight, strong, proud. The judge looked at Danielle. "Do you have any legal objection to her representing this case?" Danielle hesitated. "No, sir." "Then we shall move forward." The courtroom filled with quiet admiration. Sarah had not only won the judge's respect, she had won the room. Outside, reporters scribbled in their notepads. A forgotten lawyer returns. A widow finds justice. A court remembers a name once lost. But inside the courtroom, Sarah said nothing. She sat down beside Shahida and smiled. "This fight isn't over yet," she whispered. And Shahida, holding her hand tightly, replied, "But we are not afraid anymore, because sometimes the real surprise in court is not the judgment. It's the courage of someone who finally decides to stop hiding and stand in the light." Just when it seemed like Sarah had taken control of the courtroom, something unexpected happened. The next hearing began like usual. The judge entered. The lawyers stood. The room was filled with quiet respect. Sarah sat beside Shahida, her notes ready, her heart calm, but Mr. Danielle looked different today. He wasn't nervous anymore. In fact, he looked strangely confident. The judge looked at him. "Do you have something new to present?" Danielle smiled. "Yes, Your Honor. We have found a new witness." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Sarah looked up, surprised. "Witness? Who?" Danielle stepped aside, and from the courtroom door walked in a man, older, tired-looking, with shaky hands and sad eyes. "This is Mr. Wasim," Danielle said. "A close friend of Mr. Salim, the husband of Shahida. He says he was there when the will was made, and he claims the video is fake." The courtroom gasped. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Fake? Wasim was brought to the stand. He looked nervous, but Danielle gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Just speak the truth," he whispered. Wasim cleared his throat. "I was Salim's friend. We talked often. Before he died, he told me he wanted his brothers to manage the property. He said Shahida wasn't strong enough, that she would give everything away." He paused, then added, "I never saw him record any video. I think someone made it after his death." The judge narrowed his eyes. Sarah stood up. "Your Honor, may I ask the witness a question?" The judge nodded. Sarah walked slowly toward Wasim. Ambai looked him in the eyes, not with anger, but with curiosity. "You say you were his close friend. Can you tell the court what Salim's last illness was?" Wasim blinked. I don't remember." Sarah stepped closer. "Do you know the name of the hospital where he died?" "I think it was General Hospital." "No," Sarah said calmly. "It was Shifa Care Clinic. He was treated there for 3 weeks. I have the records." She turned to the judge. "And here is a statement from the doctor who treated him, who also witnessed the will." The courtroom leaned in. Wasim looked uncomfortable now. Sarah continued. "You say you were his friend, but you didn't attend his funeral. You didn't call Shahida once. You didn't even show up until now, 10 months later." She paused, then added softly, "Mr. Wasim, someone told you to come here, didn't they?" Wasim's lips trembled. Tears formed in his eyes. I didn't want to lie," he whispered, "but they said they'd take my shop away if I refused." Gasps filled the courtroom again. The judge banged his gavel. "Order!" Sarah turned to him. "Your Honor, this is what we're fighting. Not just a case, but fear, control, power. We must protect the truth even when it's buried under lies." The judge nodded slowly. Then he turned to Wasim. Thank you for your honesty. You may step down. As Wasim walked away, he looked at Sarah and whispered, I'm sorry. She gave a gentle nod. Outside the courtroom, Daniel stood in the hallway, looking angry. His plan had failed. Again. Inside, Shahida looked at Sarah with wide, grateful eyes. They tried to trick you, she said softly. They tried, Sarah replied. But truth doesn't break so easily. She didn't say. The final day had come. Sarah stood at the courtroom gate looking up at the sky. It was cloudy, like the day she first entered law college years ago. Back then, she had a dream to fight for truth. She lost that dream once. But now, she was living it again. Shahida stood beside her, holding a prayer bead in her hand, whispering a small dua. Inside the courtroom, it was packed. Journalists, lawyers, students, everyone had come to hear the final decision. The judge entered. The room went silent. He sat down, opened his file, and took a long breath. This case has shown us more than property rights, he began. It has shown us fear, strength, truth, and courage. He looked at Sarah. I want to thank both lawyers, but especially Miss Sarah Khalid, for returning to this court with grace, honesty, and brilliance. Sarah bowed her head slightly. The judge continued. After reviewing all documents, hearing all witnesses, and checking the video proof with digital experts, he paused. Everyone leaned forward. This court finds the will to be real, the property ownership legal, and the attack on Mrs. Shahida's rights to be unjust. He lifted his hand and declared, This court rules in favor of Shahida Salim. She is the rightful owner of the house, the shop, and all assets left by her late husband. Tears rolled down Shahida's face. She covered her mouth, whispering, Alhamdulillah. The judge turned to the opposing party. The court also warns Mr. Daniel's firm for presenting a false witness under pressure. If it happens again, legal action will be taken. Daniel looked down. Defeated. The judge rose. This case is closed. Court dismissed. He left, but the courtroom stayed full. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, people began to clap. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft, respectful claps. For the woman who came back from the shadows. For Sarah Khalid. Shahida hugged her tightly. You gave me back my home, she whispered. And you gave me back my voice, Sarah replied. Outside, reporters rushed toward her. Miss Sarah, will you return as a full-time lawyer now? Will you fight more cases like this? Sarah looked at them, smiled softly, and said, I'm not here to be famous. I'm here to fight. Wherever truth is in danger, I will be there. She turned to leave. As she walked away, a young girl from the law college came running after her. Miss Sarah, can I be your intern? Sarah laughed gently. Finish your degree first, then we'll talk. The girl nodded, full of hope, and Sarah walked away from the court, not as a victim, not as a ghost of the past, but as a symbol, a reminder that no matter how far you fall, you can always rise again, because justice is not just in books. It lives in hearts that refuse to stay silent.